Well, hello, I'm here with Doug to talk about OpenNebula and other things. And it's Tuesday, December 3rd, 2024. And the first thing I'd like to mention, I came across a YouTube video called Writing Doom. That is an award-winning short film, and it was really very interesting. It's a fictional story about people who are writing the plot of a science fiction TV show, and they're instructed by their producer for the next season to have their protagonists cope with an artificial superintelligence that gets out of control. And they engage in a discussion about this with a room of about four writers that have different specialties, and they are very knowledgeable and very accurate and very interesting. And they different people offer different perspectives, but they all point out, I think, basically that you can't even write a good story about this because the superintelligence would be ahead of you. You'd never catch up. It would anticipate your moves. You wouldn't be able to turn it off. And it would find us to be a useless waste of time and wipe us out, probably. Anyway, they make a very interesting argument. Just a whole lot of interesting things are brought up there. Now, the thing they don't address, which is, I think, the important thing, is that the artificial superintelligence has, I think, zero chance of happening. I don't even think we're going to reach artificial general intelligence, where it's as smart as a human. I was just discussing this with my class yesterday as I explained to them how large language models work, and it occurred to me that one thing you can say about large language models is they're just organized plagiarism because the way they work is they learn what word should be filled in. They mask some of the words and they practice filling in the word from context. And then they mask some of the sentences and learn to fill in the sentence from context. So all they can do is predict what the average word I found on the internet there is and what the average sentence I found on the internet there is. So all they're doing is copying writing from the internet without understanding it. So they can never create anything new or creative. All they do is create predicted thing. And this reminds me of a book I saw years ago. I knew someone who was a fiction writer, and they got a book called The Romance Writer's Phrase Book, which said if you're going to write romance novels, you know, these Harlequin romances where there's just hundreds of them and people just buy another one every week and read it. They say if you want to write these, you have to forget everything they told you in college about writing what you know and having depth to the characters and making your book different than other books and finding your own unique voice. Forget all of that because the readers do not want any uniqueness. They want it to go down smooth, like going to the deli and ordering the same thing you had 100 times. You just want it to be exactly the same as all the other books. And that's what you're going to get out of AI. So I thought that was a good way to understand it. That's the fundamental flaw. And professors that get essays written by AI say it's easy to spot them because they don't actually say anything. They don't actually mean anything. It sort of looks good at a superficial glance, like the grammar is right and stuff, but it doesn't actually make a point or anything.
Yeah, yeah,
And I think it could never.
yeah,
I mean, if we actually started replacing humans with AI, then we become like these Star Trek societies where people are using technology and nobody even understands how it works anymore because we wouldn't develop because nothing new could ever come out of it.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, anyway,
Wait, wait,
that's yeah.
yeah, there was a movie years ago called The Forbin Project.
I heard of it. Don't think I ever saw it.
Yeah, so there were two movies that came out about the same time. One was with Henry Fonda, and that was called Failsafe, and it was about it was in the era when the planes were carrying nuclear warheads, and there was a plane that was ordered to bomb Moscow, Russia, someplace in the Soviets because they had believed that the Russians had already attacked us, and so it was the retaliation.
Yeah.
And the movie is kind of the dilemma of there are two sides of this. One is the crew who was given the order to bomb, and should they bomb, should they not bomb? And then the other is that this was an incorrect order. How do you cancel that order?
Right.
And the crew thinking that it's the Russians telling them to cancel when really they know. And so in the end, what happened is Henry Fonda was the president and ordered one of our cities to be bombed as well to prevent war.
Wow. I've never heard that solution, but
Yeah,
that's a
yeah.
pretty
So
common thing in fiction. And I think something like it
yeah,
happened in real life. There was a Russian submarine that actually got the order to release the missile and then disobeyed it or something.
Yeah,
So
I think there were three. There was one where there was a 50-cent chip that was defective, and that they was going to start World War II because that chip was sending incorrect information
World
that
War III, I
missiles
think.
were on their way. Yeah, what did I say? World War III?
Yeah, World War
Yeah.
II, I started for
Oh,
the.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I've got a World War II story here
Yeah,
for you.
yeah.
Anyway, so it was the chip, and there was another one. So what happened is that chip was defective, and there was a Russian, and I might be mixing this up because I know there were three stories on this. Um, the chip was defective, and he refused to launch a retaliatory strike. There was another, or no, that was the Americans that did that. And then so the Americans had a defective chip. Let me clarify this. Now it's coming back to me. The Americans had a defective chip that was signaling that there were warheads on the way. We need to launch now. And there was about a 15-minute window where they had to decide to launch or not. And the person running the show, who was in charge, the general, whoever, was watching, and the numbers weren't kind of adding up right, and he suspected there was something wrong. So that was a tense 15 minutes or so. Then another story, not more than probably 2 years or less than 2 years later, they were doing a simulation, and somebody forgot to flip the switch, if you will, or notify everybody it was the simulation. They had a computer disk, but tape at those days, that they put in that simulated a Russian attack. And we started to retaliate before we realized that it was just a simulation or a test.
Hmm.
Somehow that wasn't set across. And then the Russian one that I think you're talking about, and this, there may have been two, but it looked to the Russians that we had launched a initial preemptive strike, and what it turned out to be was clouds and the sunrise and the way that the light was shining off uh, tricked the Russians into thinking it was a strike. And there was a large argument that was going on back and forth. Should they attack? Should they not attack? And he said no. And I believe his superiors were saying, no, you should launch. And they didn't. And he turned out, obviously, to be right.
That's what they always say about UFOs. It's clouds or something. Anyway,
Yeah, the one, there was one UFO that came up what, like 2 3 years ago, where the Navy pilots were there. Do you
yeah.
recall that? It went to Congress, and
Oh, yeah. Congress had a whole hearing about this. There's always been tons of these stories.
yeah, so it turned out there's another person that used to work at Lawrence Liver National Lab, and he said, look, these guys were using night vision goggles to view, or infrared goggles, something to see. So it wasn't normal eyesight, number one.
Yeah.
Number two, if you do the math behind this, at the way that the unidentified object was flying versus the speed of the jets that were flying over versus the window, the short amount of time that they were to monitor it, and you also realize that there was clouds out, that it was a bird, and the birds are darting left and right. They go behind the clouds, which the goggles do not allow them to see through.
Yep.
And so, if somebody would just do simple trigonometry that you would have learned in ninth grade, or simple algebra on distance, rate, time, and angles and vectors, you'd realize it's a bird. And he just happened to go outside, film birds with the same type of infrared goggles, and showed exactly what was going on. But I think that was never, evidence was never presented. But if you look on YouTube, it's pretty obvious what was going on.
That
He
sounds like a
debunked
tip.
it.
That sounds like a typical deep state explanation. You probably believe in the moon landings too and
I
vaccines and
do.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah,
Anyway,
and the Nazis have a base in Antarctica, on Mars,
and
and
there's
on
the
the
hollow
dark
earth
side
with
of the
lizard
moon.
people living in it and stuff. Anyway,
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
yeah. Anyway,
Or, yeah, or we're all wrong, and it
anyway,
really was a bird.
Well, I might as well get to the one I thought was the big story, although a bigger thing
Okay.
happened, which is a UK cloud provider
Yeah.
said that VMware's new pricing went up 1,000% for them. So they abandoned VMware and they went to the
Wow.
free alternative called, well, that's when other people are saying only 300%, other people are saying 1,200%. Apparently, VMware's new pricing is outrageous since Broadcom brought them.
Yeah.
But that said, that the reason they did that is their analysts said most people will have so much difficulty migrating off VMware to a rival that they can afford to just multiply the prices by a large amount. And but this British company moved to OpenNebula, which I'd never heard of. And OpenNebula claims to be a free and open source alternative to VMware ESXi. And it looks pretty good. So I'm thinking I'd sort of like to try it out and see if they have like a local version that my students could be using. Um, it really looks quite powerful, and they have like an enterprise plan you pay for. So, but the free version looks pretty
I
good.
see.
The thing I've
Uh,
used, which does it, is Debian Linux distribution, Proxmox. Proxmox lets you make a private cloud very easily. Um,
okay.
but on a smaller scale, this looks like it tries to go for the enterprise market. Anyway, I think that's pretty exciting. We're a good thing worth looking at. An open
Yeah,
source.
so I'm just looking up here right now.
Yeah,
OpenNebula
yeah,
has been around since 2008, so that's 16 years.
yeah,
It's available in a number of languages, popular
yeah. It
languages.
looks pretty full featured.
Yeah, I've never heard of it. I've heard of KVM.
Yeah,
Familiar with that?
yeah, and Kimu. But I mean,
Yeah.
those are the underlying virtualization hypervisor engines. An enterprise class virtualization product needs to have a lot more. Like even Microsoft's one Hyper-V, which is pretty limited by comparison. It's got a lot more to it.
Yeah, yeah. There's some limitations with Microsoft, and that's why people go with VMware.
Yeah,
And VMware's once the cloud started to become popular, VM's business model was okay, you've got your on-prem servers where you virtualized everything. Now what you're going to do is virtualize that and move it up into the cloud. So
right.
you have a virtualized network and you're going to pay us, which
Yeah.
makes no sense at all.
Well, a lot of people did it. They felt it was better to move to the cloud. People are still doing it. The
Yeah,
advantage, of
but
course, is then somebody else manages the data structure and your people can access their stuff from everywhere.
right, but you still are paying VMware in addition to your cloud provider.
That's true.
So it makes no sense, but whatever.
Well, it's ease of setting it up is what a lot of people
Yeah,
care about.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
why I'd say most people use Windows servers because they're just familiar with it.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Because I
So
mean,
it's a
the ease of use is not a small issue.
yeah. So it's when I heard this, it's kind of the silly business model,
Yeah.
but it's easier for companies because you lift and shift. So instead of being on-prem, you move it up to the cloud. But to have a virtualized environment doesn't really make sense.
No, I've never seen that make any sense at scale. The ones I've seen just run terribly slow.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't know. I've worked with companies that were, can I say, dumping or defecting away from VMware for that very
Yeah.
reason.
Yeah. Well,
So I guess the long-term answer is don't buy Broadcom stock, huh?
it remains to be seen. They sure have a plan to make money off VMware, and it seems to be working to some extent so far.
Yeah, Sam, do you know what else Broadcom bought?
No, but do you?
Norton
Or
Antivirus.
did they? Well, I don't know if
Yeah.
that's made any money in a long time.
Well, it's still being sold. People still use it. So
I guess. Yeah.
they also bought some other kind of like off tools that I'm not remembering right now, but it's kind of, Broadcom was originally a network card company.
Yeah, I thought they mostly made hardware.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, network cards, things along those lines. So it's
Yeah.
odd that they've shifted. I mean, it's a weird buy for them, in my opinion, to buy VMware. That
Yeah.
seemed kind of odd business, and to buy an antivirus company, but it showed
Yeah.
they were pivoting to make the switch to software only, I guess,
I
products.
guess. Anyway, I just want to mention the other thing that is actually really
Yeah,
big, which is that South Korea's president has declared martial law, and the U.S. press has no real information about it, but Al Jazeera has a really good story telling you what happened. He's dissolved parliament, suspended all political activity, frozen the entire rest of the government, so he has sole control, locked people out of parliament. There are protesters. People can't even get in. Uh, it is amazing. It's very much what Trump says he's going to do here on January 20, declare martial law, um, and use the army to deport all the immigrants. But he really did it, and people are very outraged. He says because what happened is he couldn't get any budget passed through their parliament, just like we haven't been able to here with Republicans in power. And he decided, and they wouldn't fund any of his proposals. And he said, "You're all agents of North Korea, blocking everything. You're destroying the country. So I'm just declaring martial law. Now I'll be the sole ruler and I can do whatever I want." So we'll see
I
what comes
see.
of that. Apparently, this did happen 50 years ago. Um, but anyway, that's pretty outrageous and important to keep an eye on, I think.
Yeah. Well, when I think this was in Iraq when they were rebuilding Iraq or one of the countries in the Middle East, and we were trying to promote democracy, the people there said, "Why? We don't want to have your system because you can't do anything. With a dictator, if a dictator orders it done, it gets done."
This is essentially Trump's argument. He tried to
Yeah,
do all these great things his first term, and then there were all these courts and Congress and everything in the way, and he's learned his lesson. Get rid of all that nonsense.
yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly.
And
All
and you
right.
know what happened? I think I've heard voters focus groups, and they say they voted for him because prices are too high, and they blame Biden for that. And they think when Trump was in there, prices were lower. That's why they voted for him. People did not vote for him really because they want him to do all this crazy stuff he talks about, like tariffs and deportation, not and banning a. Not very many people are on board with the actual thing he thinks he's got a mandate to do. Anyway,
Well, Sam, you're bringing up my first good story. Tell me
yeah,
about this one. Black Friday was here, right?
yeah,
And stores were not open on Thanksgiving, which is kind of unusual. Usually they open up late
yeah.
Thanksgiving Day, or they open up at midnight or 5 a.m. We didn't hear any of that, or at least I didn't. So that thing seems to be a thing of the past where people are stampeding in. But I'm hearing stories of the Black Friday sales were real sales, especially at Walmart, where they didn't have enough cashiers. So people were waiting in line. They just got impatient and walked out the door with the merchandise that they intended to pay for. And I mean, we're talking not little items, but things like 74-inch TVs.
So basically, they looted the stores.
Yeah, yeah. There was no security. So,
Man, you would think they would anticipate this, but apparently not.
yeah, I do not know how widespread this is, but I've seen some articles where people were interviewed. How was your Black Friday? And it was great.
Well, don't
Things
they
were
have,
free.
I don't know if that's going to work. Don't they have security cameras? I mean, they could hunt these guys down later.
I look, I don't know how widespread it is.
Yeah.
Um, but it just
Well, I wouldn't do that.
I guess that's the retaliation for the years of opening at midnight or and these were things that were like, the doorbusters where we want you to come here. But I think all of that, I think the Black Friday is a thing of the past because of online shopping.
I would think so, but it used
Yeah,
to be that people would want to get one particular toy, like a Cabbage
Elmo
Patch
or
Kid or
yeah,
something,
yeah,
and they
yeah,
would fight
yeah.
over that. I don't know if they have managed to make that kind of nonsense happen still.
I you know, yeah, I mean we're not seeing it. We'll see if the magic tool, I mean the magic Christmas item,
Yeah.
like the pet rock,
I know.
right?
This is why years
Remember?
ago I just gave up this thing of buying presents at Christmas. It just seems to be a complete scam,
Yeah,
not
it
anything
is.
to have anything to do with, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, yeah,
Of course, I
yeah.
don't have a
No,
kid. Maybe kids love it, but I don't see any reason for adults to waste their time on this nonsense.
Yeah, well, kids now want just games, right? iPad games.
I got no clue what kids want. I don't have any kids.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
read all sorts of scary things about them.
Nah, it is interesting. My kids, they would buy me something that'd be the wrong size, the wrong color, wrong shape, something I
Yeah.
already have. So I'd go back to the store and have to return it. So I told my kids, look, if you want to buy me a present, do it and then return it and just give me the receipts to show me what you bought.
Yeah, I remember my father was the same. I don't want anything. Just don't get me anything. I don't want
Yeah,
anything.
yeah,
I don't
yeah,
go in the
yeah,
store. I don't go shopping. I say, I don't need anything.
yeah. And Sam, I since you don't go to the stores, but I have, I got to tell you, this drives me crazy now. The Christmas music, the songs that were playing 70, 80 years ago, 60, 70, 80 years ago, and there are a few sprinkles of new ones, but they're just playing over and over. And it also appears to me that they've turned up the volume in both restaurants and
Uh,
stores for background music. And
but
I'll tell you, when I go shopping now, I can't think because of the music.
you know,
And we're
can you imagine working there and having to listen to it on
no,
loop all day long? When I was a kid, we had a Burger King in town, and they had a loop that was like about an hour long, and the tape was all stretched and distorted. So it would not only be the same stuff over and over, it would go, and the workers there were so miserable. They have to listen to that all day.
I
Yeah.
mean it's time. I think they need to start. We need to start a campaign. No more background music.
Well, I think,
That's just me.
yeah,
Maybe I'm
yeah.
getting old, but
No,
I'll tell you, it's that's the torture that the FBI used against David Koresh and the Branch Davidians to get him to surrender.
oh, and
That didn't work.
they used it at Guantanamo Bay on the
Oh
Muslims. They
yes,
like AC/DC and they hated it. Um, but when only thing I hear is when I go to Safeway, and they're often playing good songs. Anyway,
are they?
oh yeah, I hear going there. I hear Dire Straits and stuff. They got real music, and music's pretty good.
That's
So,
funny.
yeah, well, I mean, if I was going to do it, I would, play good music. There's tons of good music out there.
Yeah, but you know what the problem with it is?
No? Oh, well, you might have to pay something, but I think there's radio stations you can subscribe to that don't cost too much. I think you can get
No,
like,
but you have to. It's a commercial play of the song, so you have to pay the royalties, is
oh
my
yeah, but I
understanding.
think there's like a commercial license for Pandora or something. Anyway, I think there are ways to do it. Anyway, um,
Yeah, yeah, but why would you pay when you can get it free?
because I care about the quality of music. I don't know if any of my
Well,
customers would. I've noticed
yeah,
this. Other people
yeah.
don't hear music the way I do, but anyway, so
Anyway, all right, you want to move on. Let's go.
might as
Okay.
well. I got some. So Google Chrome is adding an AI feature that will pop up a bubble, and what it will do is look up the reputation of the website you're going to on
Yes.
trusted resources and say this website has been rated trustworthy, or people say this website is scammy and suspicious. So that sounds like that could be pretty useful. And
So that's something that's been out there. It's an add-on that I've had. I think it's called Trusted Site.
yeah, something like that. This one
Some,
assembles a few of those and rates it into like a rating that it presents to you.
so it's kind of like an antivirus software. It doesn't use one metric, it uses
Yeah, the
several
one thing I
metrics.
wonder about is, Microsoft tried to do this with Internet Explorer like 15 years ago, and they discovered that if you pop up any kind of warning, people just close it and don't read it. So the only thing that works is to cover the entire page with big red letters saying, no, don't go here. This is a bad site. So I wonder if this little box is actually going to help or if people will just ignore it.
Well, you know who's doing that right now are the Indian scammers. They pop up not a little box, but a big box. Your computer has been infected with the virus and malware. You
Yeah.
need to call this phone number right
Well, yeah,
away.
so maybe it's not such a good thing. Yeah.
All right, so this brings me up to my story on
Yeah.
Chrome. Have you been
Yeah.
following Chrome OS? You know that's Google is talking about dropping Chrome OS in favor of Android.
Oh, yeah, I never understood why Chrome OS existed anyway. Why isn't it just Android?
Yeah, I think they have tighter control over Chrome OS, in comparison to Android?
I think Google totally controls Android. It's a Google product.
All right, I don't know.
Yeah.
Let's move on. Next story.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm glad to hear that. I've had Chromebooks, and Chrome OS is just a damn annoyance. Might as well be Android. Anyway, so, well, Bloomberg has an article that in Australia, um, a, the top Australian bank added AI to analyze loan requests for home loans, and they say it is saving them money and preventing scams, and so on. And they say it's really helping them a lot. And they have 50 other use cases they're developing for AI. So I've seen a dozen articles saying that AI is in fact a waste of time and slowing people down and making mistakes. This is the first major business I've heard actually saying AI is in fact benefiting them. So to that extent, I suppose it's important. They say it lowered frauds by 30% and it cut call center wait times by 40%. So
Wow,
by
that's pretty
pre-processing
impressive.
requests for loans, apparently it's like level one tech support. It does the simple parsing of the good from the bad, so your staff doesn't have to waste so much time and they can focus on the cases that require human attention. So it sounds pretty good.
Yeah, interesting. I've also Marketplace Tech had a story on AI, and there's a lot of cases against it, but there are some areas where it's turning out to be beneficial, and it's replacing 2%, 5% of the workforce.
And I saw an article, I don't think I put it here, but Microsoft posted like a test of their Copilot tool. They got like 100 programmers to program the Copilot and 100 to program without it. And then they claimed that it improved their performance, but their actual numbers were really pathetic. Like the probability of passing a unit test went up by like 3%. And then someone claimed that their statistics are wrong and they actually fudged the results. It wasn't even that beneficial. So, this is the thing. Many people are saying, what exact good did we get out of this? And how many billions have been poured into it? And so far, it's nowhere near having the value to justify its investment.
Yeah, but Sam, haven't we, and maybe this is a derivation of AI, we've been using AI for a long time to detect defects or like spoiled food, things along those lines that have been
Sure.
picked.
Oh, those things have been around for a long time. It's the
Yeah,
large language models are the big new ones. All the things based on large language models are the ones
I
that get
see.
the attention, and they all seem to be poorly thought out use cases that don't actually help so far.
So, yeah, so what you're talking about is these are very specific, single function. Is the apple good or bad? Something along
Right.
those
I mean, that
lines.
we've been able to do for a really long
Yeah,
time with simple
yeah,
things like k-means. I teach this in my machine learning class. There are really simple algorithms that have been around for decades that will work to find the one that is not like the others.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, okay. So, yeah, okay.
Right. And those
Sounds
those are
good.
they hardly even call those intelligence. But anyway, yeah. So uh
So, since we're on AI,
yeah.
Amazon, I don't know if you heard about this, is installing AI cameras in delivery trucks. Any idea why?
No, it's not obvious at all to see if the driver's goofing off or
Close. They want to know if the driver is singing. You can't sing if you're an Amazon driver.
why not? I would like encourage
Distracted
this.
driving.
I would tell them to sing the company song and
Nope.
generally, when I was a kid, this was from the old people that work on ships. When you're doing some kind of physical labor, you do sing to stay in time and to keep morale up and stuff. Gee, I would think that would be good for you.
Well, not while you're driving an Amazon van. They consider it distracted driving.
I would like to see a study of that. I wonder if that's true. I think it's probably not true. I think if you're singing a song this is probably helps you focus better. I
I
think,
think I would agree with you, but Amazon's lawyers, I assume, are thinking otherwise.
well, maybe they have evidence, or maybe they're just making an assumption. Anyway,
Or maybe they have lawsuits against them for accidents. And music was on, so the opposing attorney is saying, "Oh, you had a distracted driver."
well, something I was told when I was young, so this must be from like 70 years ago. Um, they said that Consumer Reports or somebody did a study. There are certain people who are incredibly safe drivers who had like 10 times the number of miles and still no accidents. And they went and drove with these people. They said it is really boring because they won't talk and they won't play the radio. They're just watching the road and they're thinking about like the guy half a mile ahead. What if that guy swerves into my lane? They're really paying far more attention and thinking about every possible problem and
Yeah.
anticipating it and staying far from it. So I guess to that extent, it's right. Although Amazon drivers are in fact driving in the city, trying to go on crowded streets, going through traffic, parking in the street. It's pretty crazy dangerous driving. I imagine they probably get in a lot of fender benders. They have those
Yeah. Yeah.
big clumsy trucks. I want to come across them. They can't really fit on the road. That looks pretty difficult. I would sure not want an AI to do that driving, and I bet they do hit things pretty often.
Yeah. I've seen videos where an Amazon driver will hit something and not even know it and drive off.
Yeah.
I had an Amazon driver delivered to my neighbor, and I don't understand this, but it was a van where you have two doors that open, one to the left, one to the right. He had the door to the left closed, but the door to the right open, backed up into a retaining wall and just drove off. Packages were not flying out, but they could.
Yep.
I don't understand how you could drive away and not know that the back door is open.
I saw a PG&E truck do this. I was walking down a street by the college, and a PG&E truck had a huge coil of wire in the back and a gate, and the gate was loose, and it flapped open and clobbered this SUV, caved the whole thing in, shattered all the windows. And I was walking by,
Wow.
and all this showered broken glass landed right at my feet. And I said, "Wow, you don't see that every day." And he just kept going. And so I said, "Hey,"
Hmm.
so I called the cops. I called 911 and they said, "Is someone bleeding to death on the ground?" I said, "No." So they hung up on me and I'm like, "Hey, wait. Well, I guess it's not an emergency." So I couldn't figure out what to do. So I left like a note on the guy's windshield saying, "I saw what happened," because his car was wrecked. I saw the truck
Yeah.
that did this. And so then I went out for breakfast and I realized I'll call PG&E. And PG&E had like, we'll put you in a queue and ignore you forever, or you can say there's a gas leak. And I said, "Okay, there's a gas leak." And I
Yeah.
said, this, and
Yeah.
after that, when I came back like half an hour later, there was a PG&E guy there with a clipboard and the owner of the car reading my note, trying to figure out what's going on. So, but that guy was just kept going. He did not notice his gate flapping open, smashing things.
Yeah. Sam, on if you're driving a big PG&E truck like that,
Yeah,
I think that's plausible. I could understand that.
I could see it with those Amazon things too, that you could totally back into
That you
something you
just
don't
don't
even notice.
know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can tell you with airlines, this sounds crazy, but takeoffs and landings, sometimes when the wing strikes or the back of the plane strikes because they're taking off at an angle too great, um, the pilots don't know it. They feel something, they just think it's turbulence.
Yeah.
And I remember reading about one story where the plane took off. They hit a retaining wall and took out the navigation system for landing, the antennas, and they flew to their destination, not knowing that the antennas were still stuck in the plane, in the back of the plane,
So I
until
guess
they
they did not
landed.
need the autopilot.
Well, that navigation was for landing, precision landing in clouds.
Okay, good.
So, and I guess nobody had figured it out until they came landed. And anyway,
Yeah.
things like that happen, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So
So
I guess I could excuse the PG&E drivers, especially if it's a trailer.
yep. Well, this relates to one of my stories. So Tesla, I
Okay.
didn't know this, but
Yeah.
apparently Waymos have human operators. The Waymo self-drives,
Yeah.
but apparently when it gets stuck, there's a remote control from a human operator. Although Waymo hasn't publicly admitted this, this is what people say. And they say it because Tesla is now hiring drivers for their self-driving robotaxis. They are going to be under remote control from some central office, and apparently they'll use self-driving, but when they're in trouble, they'll have a human take over.
I see. I
And so I
see.
imagine it's going to be like the supermarket where they have the automatic checkout and there's like 8 checkout machines, but there's one store employee supposed to handle the problems. So I guess there's going to be one Tesla remote driver to handle like 8 or 10 robo taxis, and God help you if they all get in trouble at once. But supposedly, I think the idea, if it's like Waymo, the AI will be smart enough to just stop when it can't figure out what to do and then wait for a
Yeah.
human to like take control. Unfortunately, what I read about Teslas, they say they tend to just like do dangerous things like veer into traffic for no good reason. You expect you to grab the wheel and fix it right away. So I don't know. I'm pretty skeptical of Tesla's robo-taxis.
Yeah, I think I would be also.
People say the Waymo is really careful and cautious and slow and safe. It's not scary. It's like a driver that just got their license at age 18 and they stops for a long time and doesn't proceed until everything is really clear and all that. And that's what I would much prefer.
So I wonder when it stops and starts creeping, if that's when a human driver takes over.
Well, I don't know, but apparently it only moves if it's sure to be safe, and otherwise it
Yeah.
stops and waits for human help, which is the
Yeah.
right move, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Huh.
Anyway,
Okay.
have you got another one?
Yeah. Do you have another one?
I got a couple more.
Yeah. Why don't you? I got a wrap up one.
Okay. I found this an interesting article about a new phishing campaign. So they want to send you an email with a poisoned Word document, but of course your antivirus would catch it, so they corrupt the Word document so it won't open. And therefore the antivirus can't get in to see the malware. But if you open it in Microsoft Word, it says, "Oh, your document is corrupted. I can try to recover it." And the recovery works. That's actually pretty clever.
So that's sort of like encrypting the document so the
Yeah,
AV can't read it.
yeah,
So it can't detect the signature.
right. It can't get in.
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
actually a pretty good idea. And so it's a cute one.
I wonder how they corrupt it. Any idea how they corrupt it
Oh
so
yeah,
it's
you
fixable?
probably just put a couple bad bytes in the header or something because it's something Microsoft can easily recover. In fact, this is so common. I frequently open Word documents and Microsoft Office says it's corrupted, so it appears to be a defect in Office. You could probably just find out why it happens. Like remember the days of Outlook Express where you'd have your email in a database and it would always get corrupted and there was a tool from Microsoft to fix it. There
Yeah,
was just some fairly common mistake it made, which it
I
could
see. I
fix.
see.
And I think the same thing's true of Word documents. Word has always had these corrupted document problems.
So you don't think that antivirus software could detect that?
Well, it could detect it as a corrupt document,
Yeah,
but it can't open it. It tries to open like zip files and stuff to see what's in there.
I see. I see. Because you need to manipulate a couple bits bytes to unencrypt
Well, you
or
need to unpack
uncorrupt
it
it.
to look in there for the signature.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And Word
I
documents
see.
are zip files now. They're zipped up plain text XML files. They have been since 2008. So it's a
Yeah.
corrupt zip archive is what it is. And if you can't unzip it, then you can't really say what's in there.
Yeah, I know that for a while there, you could encrypt a Word document
Oh yeah.
and you and then use WinZip or one of the unzipping tools to unzip it
Even without the key?
without the password. Yeah.
Oh, that's rude. I didn't know that.
So
That's
that's
terrible.
something I used to teach my students how to do. So you take a Word doc, you encrypt it, you then you try and open it with WinZip, one of the tools, and the Word document is actually a couple files, right?
It's several XML files zipped.
Yeah, so you don't get the original Word document in its full layout with you just get essentially the text file version of it.
But what was the point of encrypting it then?
Well, to protect it, obviously.
Yeah. Well, see, is that true of modern versions of Word? Because I know they had a flaw in like 2000, in the 2000 version of Word. At
No,
that,
this is probably 10 years ago.
yeah, I
And
hope they fixed it.
it's something I taught and then I tried it again and it didn't work, or maybe I didn't do it the right way, but I think they fixed that.
I would assume so because it's really important that your encrypted file be unreadable. That's the whole point.
Well, it's one of these where if you encrypt a document with Word and you can't open it with Word, it's safe, right?
Well, that's what the first generation of encrypted USB sticks would do. They
Right.
would pop up a utility and ask you for the password. and you couldn't use their utility to get in without the password. But if you just like booted up Linux and dumped the data off file, it was just
Yeah.
sitting there. So
Yeah.
that
Or
was my
it's like some of the password managers.
Well, like most of them. In fact, I had a project. I found out, I saw a pen testing on Paul Security Weekly. They had a pen tester come in. He said, boy, what I love is when I hack into a machine, I get code execution and I see they have a password manager today. So next thing, I just steal all those passwords and I'm off to the races. I said, hey, wait a minute. You do what? What? He said, yeah, all the passwords are just sitting in plain text in memory for all those password
Yeah.
managers. I'm like, really? So I put that in my classes for homework, sealing the passwords out of password managers. And this semester, it stopped working. So I think maybe they finally figured this out and upgraded it. So they're not just
Well,
sitting in plain text in memory all the time.
well, some of the password managers would just store your passwords in a text file.
Well, I haven't seen that. That's
That's the early password managers. Some of them, that's what they were doing.
well, the new ones up until last year just had it sitting in RAM in plain text all the time, which is not
Yeah.
that much better.
But you'd only have the one password that you were using, right?
No,
Oh,
the entire vault, your credit card numbers and everything is just sitting there in plain text in RAM. And so I
I
had
see.
gave my students homework to find it, and it seemed to be true of all password managers. But
Yeah.
now those projects have stopped working. It doesn't seem to be sitting there in plain text anymore. I think it's probably just encrypted with reversible encryption with the key somewhere. Probably not a huge step forward, but a little bit step forward.
All right. And Sam, I think let me kind of transition to another story here.
Yeah,
I think this came out about a month ago in Australia, that Australia has implemented age verification to be implemented not this coming year,
right,
but in 2026.
right. Without any
And,
details of how they're going to verify the age, which is what bothered me.
yeah, well, the Australian legislatures, they're smart. They said, look, you tech companies, you do it. We're not going to tell you how to do it, but you do it.
Well,
So,
also, I think the wording is they must make reasonable efforts. So they don't even need to succeed. They just have to show that they tried, I think.
and if you're the person that's claiming to be of age, but really you're underage, there's no penalty for you.
Well, there wouldn't be any penalty for the kids. And I know this is, of course,
Well, wait a minute. It's like a kid going into a bar
yeah.
presenting fake ID.
Well, I guess it is, if you want to look at it that way. I guess you
Yeah.
could try punishing the kids. This reminds me of when they asked Trump, should you punish the woman for getting an abortion after you ban abortion? He
Oh,
said, well, yeah,
absolutely.
well, it's an interesting issue. Usually you don't, I would think punishing the company would be probably a lot easier for people to accept than punishing the kid.
Yeah. 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 Well, it's easier because they have deeper pockets and you only have to go after a couple companies than hundreds of thousands of kids.
Yeah, well, and the question is there any way to do this? They're supposedly going to have a demonstration from the government soon of them showing how the age gating is going to work, how they can detect whether you're of age without requiring an ID from some kind of biometrics or something.
Yeah, it's not going to work.
It sure doesn't sound like it's going to work. I remember a few years ago, there was somebody that made an app on a phone just for women. And so the first thing you had to do is take a selfie to prove you're a woman. So I tried to hold up like a magazine of a picture of a woman, but it wouldn't fall for it. But then all the trans people got madder than hell. And all the women whose face don't look right, they said, who are you to tell me whether I'm a woman? What is this crap? And there was a huge storm about it.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
wanted to see what was behind that wall and whether it was secure, but I couldn't get in because I couldn't convince it I was a woman. Anyway,
You should have just gone onto the web and grabbed a picture.
well, I think it actually did something more than just a simple scan because that didn't work. I know in Japan, I think they had the stores had like a smile detector for out of the break room. They had to make sure you were smiling enough before you went out on the floor. And so people learned to just hold up a picture. Um,
All right, you got another one?
I do have a couple more. They're pretty fun.
Okay.
So you know the birds aren't real people? I really like this one. I had stickers.
Wait, what?
There's a about 3, 4 years ago, a satire group decided to say that birds aren't real. All the birds have been secretly replaced by drones and they're from the government and they're spying on you. And when you see them on the wires, they're not resting, they're recharging. And so he had a whole conspiracy theory about this, made a fake conspiracy theory about it, and had meetings and videos and posters and shirts and everything. And it was a form of satire, sort of making fun during
Oh,
the
I
Trump
see. I
years
see.
of conspiracy theories. So those people have now bought the Enron trademark for like $200. So they own the Enron trademark, which, as you can imagine, is not in great demand. And they have reopened Enron.com. And they have a whole professional looking webpage saying Enron is coming back. We're proud they're hiring. They're going to launch something in a week, like a cryptocurrency or something, and they're going to run some kind of fake scam as Enron. So that should be fun to watch. Wow. Zoom just crashed and rebooted.
Yeah, it did for me. And,
And it said
we're
recording in
back.
progress. I wonder what that's going to do to the recording. It says it's still recording. That was bizarre.
Yeah. So you
Kind of,
froze on me for a bit.
some kind of defect on my end.
Yeah. Huh.
Anyway, so there's going to be Enron. Enron is back as a
So,
joke.
let's see if we didn't catch that. Let's review that real quick. The birds are on the wire. They're getting
It
recharged.
was a fake conspiracy theory, and now they bought Enron, so they're going to make a fake Enron. They bought the Enron trademark, which only cost $250. As you can imagine, it wasn't in great demand. So they now have Enron.com with the logo and merchandise with the logo. The new Enron is coming back.
Sam, can you hear me?
Yeah, it says my internet connection is unstable.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, I think we better quit this one.
Well, I got one for you. Or I could save it till next time.
Yeah, better save it till next time because I don't know what's going to come of this. I'm going to stop this recording.
Sounds good.
Yep.
So
Uh,
it'll be Friday. We resume.
it will be. Yeah.
So